Getting old. I don't recognize the face in the mirror too much. But
Well, we'll recognize it. Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. Today, we have a very, very special guest. I think you're going to really enjoy the show. We're going to think a little bit sports, but we're going to go outside the box. We're going to go into the entertainment world, and who better to do it than with Kerry McCluggage? He's a fantastic personality in terms of the history of cinema, television. He owns his own company. He's worked for so many others as an executive. Steven, I'm honored to have him on, and I want you to make sure that we introduce Kerry in the best possible manner with the most and the highest of honor. What a pleasure to have him on here today.
It's a tremendous honor and a pleasure for me to have Kerry McCluggage on because I have a long personal relationship with Kerry. As we all know, we've discussed at great length on this show the book I wrote, One Night, Two Teams, Alabama versus USC, and the Game That Changed the Nation, was published in 2007. That book was receiving interest from Hollywood even before it was published. And Kerry was one of the very first people who got involved. And he optioned that book in 2007, and we've been trying to develop it in all the years since. But I got to know Kerry. I'll never forget. I met him the first time. He had an opulent office on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. I was there with my partners, Anthony Davis, Jim Starr, and our agent, Lloyd Robinson, who's probably almost 90 years old now, but still going strong. But it was so wonderful to meet Kerry, and we've gone through a lot. I mean, it's been a masterclass for me in the business of Hollywood. And let me just say before we bring Kerry on, I think it's fair to say, Kerry, that you're unique in producers in that you not only recognize the product and the creative aspect of a film, but you're also very strong on the business end. And, we all watch Paramount Plus. It seems to me, from what I've read, you're a big reason that company grew from where it was before you got there to where it was after you made it really, really big. So I'm really happy to have Kerry McCluggage, my friend and partner, on Take 5 with Steven Travers. Welcome, Kerry McCluggage.
Nice to be here. We met on the Paramount lot first, and that was after about 14 years at Universal in both the television and film divisions. But I've been, lucky enough to work with some very talented people. So I probably owe it more to them. But it's a little like running a television studio or a film studio is a little like analogous to being a baseball manager in that you get to work with the players and in terms of exclusive deals, you recruit them. So you're recruiting your players, so to speak. And like I said, I was lucky enough to work with some very talented people over the time.
Well, that's an amazing portion of where we're going to go a little bit down memory lane and a little bit about your projection for where you see the future of film and television production, the way that things are going right now and how they're changing almost right before our very eyes. The sports world is going through the same thing, whether you like NIL and the portal, whether you can't stand it, it's here and it's going to be for a while. But Kerry, if you don't mind, just before we went on the air, I found out that you're from Wichita, Kansas. How does a young boy from Wichita end up being one of the top producers? You own your own company now. Talk a little bit about, as a young kid, what it was growing up and then moving as many times as you have to where you finally developed, this is really what I want to do. I get a sense and I want to pursue this in a manner that it might be the rest of my life. You know what I mean? My career.
Well, ultimately, I mean, that's why in I think it was pretty much in high school when I decided that I wanted to work in the television and film industry, and I didn't really have any experience in it at the time, other than acting in some school plays, and I knew that was not my future, and I had no interest in doing that. That's why I went to USC. At the time, it was School of Cinema was separate from broadcasting, which was in part of being assimilated into the School of Journalism at USC. So I was a broadcasting major there, and did ultimately go to Harvard Business School after that, immediately after the 4 years at USC. But while I was at USC, managed to get some experience in working on television shows, mostly tape shows like Flip Wilson specials, etc. And
Oh, goodness.
just to learn more about the business in other than an academic setting.
Yeah.
And I kind of got talked into going to business school. Nobody recruited there. But in the second year at Harvard Business School, I was hired by CBS to do a consulting project for them. They were, at the time, there were only 3 networks, so that dates me right there. It was pre the Fox network.
Sure.
And they were third, and they wanted to know why studio suppliers were not bringing them their best ideas. So they, during the second year, they hired me to go out and meet with all the studio heads and talk to them about CBS product. And I finished that study, and in the meantime, it rolled around to June, so I just drove back across country, and I was about to take a job at NBC in their Programming Associates program, which is a nice euphemism for where they start you out as a page, basically.
Yeah.
But I got a call from the people at Universal, and they said, where are you? And I said, well, what do you mean, where am I? I'm in, Southern California. I have no idea how they even found where I was at, because I was living with a friend, and this is pre-cell phone. But they said, you're supposed to come to work for us. And I met with them on a Wednesday and a Thursday. They said to come in Friday and sign some papers, and you'd start Monday working on the 3-hour premiere of Battlestar Galactica. So,
oh my goodness, wow.
But so I came in Friday, and they had a document flipped to the last page with the red X, and they said, sign here. I asked them if they mind if I read this document. And so I quickly read it. I said, well, this is a 7-year contract. And they said, yeah, everybody signs them. And anyway, I signed and went to work, and ended up being there for 14 years before I went to Paramount.
Well, most people, I guess, Kerry, start at the very bottom, and they take out the trash, or they get coffee for everybody. Here you are with the 7-year deal, basically being offered after you've just very briefly started working in the business. Would it be fair to say that one of the attributes that you had is you're trying to build and maintain relationships? From what I was hearing, they're wanting their need. Hey, why isn't anybody bringing us their great ideas? You helped to organize some of that. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I would. Starting out as an executive assistant, it was very low salary, and and probably about the lowest level executive you can get, but increased rapidly from there. Started out originally on the ABC account, and over time you build up a little more credibility, and it was able to work from there. And we had different organizational structures over time at Universal. Originally, it was just organized by network. Then it was organized by comma, dramedy, movies of the week. And I left as senior vice president of all development. and went to the movie division and came back to produce Miami Vice for the third season before they moved me back into the president job at Universal Television. So.
Well, we're going to get into some of the shows that you worked on, and everyone's going to go, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. But let's start with, you got to meet Geraldine, Flip Wilson's character, and that to me would be enough to put a smile on everybody's face.
Yeah.
Back when Flip had his own variety show, right? That was one of the first shows you ever worked on?
Yeah. No, he was as funny in person as he was on camera.
Yeah, he appeared that way, right? Oh my gosh. Do me a favor. You said that you probably Guys and Dolls or something like that you worked on when you were in high school, and you realized that acting wasn't for you. For those that may not know the difference, I'm going to ask you to clarify a little bit. The director produces the specific show.
Mm-hmm.
The executive producer, which is the role and the executive branch of that, does so many other things to make sure that the director has everything that they need to produce this specific show. Can you kind of talk about the differences between the actors and being on stage or in front of the camera, and then what you found a great passion for and a love to do on the backside of that? Describe what that was, at least in your opinion, in terms of the difference between the two.
Well, the executive producer title, I mean, there's been a real expansion in terms of the number of credits on a show, but in television, the executive producer was usually the creator-writer. And that was the top title. In movies, executive producers are more involved with the financing, and the top title in the movies were producers. So there's that difference, but everybody has their own style, but I was always tried to be more involved on the creative side in terms of helping the writers shape their ideas, or when we're dealing with a script to help them just make it the best they can be within the vision of what they're trying to do. I'm not sure if that totally answers your question, but
well, I know one very obvious would be the director is always asking for money, and that needs to be approved by a bunch of people. They also have 100 other needs. I need more cameras, or I need fewer people to be around the set. You either approve or make sure that they get everything that they need in order to do this. And there's a budget, of course. Obviously, the money is a part of it. But yeah, I'm just asking for a specific direction in terms of what the executive side is at compared to what everybody in front of the camera is responsible for.
Well, on the television side, I mean, you kind of have involvement in the development phase and then selling it, and then when you're executing on either a pilot or episodes of a series, it takes on a slightly different form, where you're really just looking at dailies every day, and then the first rough cuts and shaping them through to completion. So you really do get involved in every phase of it. But I think I always found that you could get the most success by really trying to build on the vision of the executive producer creator, and within budget parameters, get the best film on screen as possible.
I don't want to jump ahead of myself. And Steven, I know he has hundreds of things. Just one other real quick, like Coach, for example, or Miami Vice. You worked on those shows.
Sure.
Is there a certain moment where you clench your fist and you go, yes, when a Bear Bryant or a John McKay or another real coach might pat you on the back and go, you know what, that show that you did, I loved it because it made me laugh out loud. Or maybe the wife says he's never laughed this loud, or where you connect with the show and its specific design. Miami Vice would be, let's say if there was a federal agent that walked up to you one day, man, you did that one scene and that was spot on with something that I went through. Is there a certain point of elation that you get when you can connect with the public as well as with a specific industry that the show is trying to glorify?
Yeah, I mean, you get your own response, as you finalize the script and finalize the pilot and selling it. But then, you get the ongoing validation of that you're doing something as people become more and more aware of it. And I always had the most affection for the projects that were most difficult to sell. Law and Order was, there was after I worked on Miami Vice, and I brought Dick Wolf into an overall deal. And we ended up selling the show to Fox originally. And at the time, Barry Diller was running Fox, and Garth Ancier and Kevin Wendell were the two senior lieutenants who bought the show. And after we sold it as a 13-episode commitment, I got a call from Barry Diller, who explained to me that this show would never work.
Wow.
And that he wanted to get out of it. And then it was a long conversation, but I ultimately said, look, if I can sell it somewhere else, I will do that. But if not, you're stuck with it. And he wasn't that happy about it, but we did end up selling it to NBC.
Yeah. And 20 years later, how'd that work out for you?
There are multiple spinoffs, as you know, and it's still ongoing. But the like I said, I like the shows that were more of a challenge to sell. Miami Vice was different because it was right after they had kind of improved remote controls, so you could actually kind of flip through rapidly through the channels. And we wanted to, the concept of Miami Vice was not in and of itself as in terms of a franchise. I mean, they were undercover vice cops. Not that unusual, but we wanted, if you were flipping through the channels, to have a show that both immediately looked and sounded different than anything on the air. And Tony Yerkovich was the creator of that. He was coming off of Hill Street Blues, where I recruited him to come to Universal. And we ultimately brought Michael Mann on board, and because Tony had a feature commitment that I'd gotten him that he wanted to do, and everybody collaborated to really realize that vision. And it didn't take off immediately. It was scheduled on Friday nights on NBC. But over the summer, when there were more people watching reruns, it kept building and building till it was, by the time it hit the second season, was a big hit.
I would imagine so. Kerry, please forgive me for interrupting. The speed of the scenes, the amount of action that took place, the colors, right? The visual, you've got the waters, you got pretty girls everywhere, and the music. What a home run that you hit, especially with probably younger viewers. I know at the time I was in college when I first saw it, and I have to admit to you, I have called many a friend pal because of Don Johnson. So I just want you to know that some of that has carried over. So, but he did it so sarcastically that a lot of people didn't know if he really meant, hey, you're my buddy, you're my pal, or if you're the bad guy. And that's just one of the carryovers from that show. That
considering that his previous work was a apocalypse movie called A Boy and His Dog.
Yeah, that was his. I think it was the youngest role that he got. He was. That show was difficult to sell on two levels. One, because it was a different concept with the sound and look of the show that we wanted to recreate, but also because we were insistent upon Don Johnson, and he'd had about 6 failed pilots after A Boy and His Dog.
I wonder why. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
But that wasn't that unusual. I mean,
No.
Tom Selleck was in the same situation when we sold Magnum PI, and but they were very reluctant, and we insisted. And 3 days into dailies on the pilot, Don was kind of doing what we didn't see in any of the readings for him, which was it was shortly after, I think about a year or two after 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy, and he was doing kind of a bad Nick Nolte impression.
It's your damn dinner.
And we had to fly down and say, Don, just do it like we did it in the readings, drop the Nick Nolte stuff, and he got with the program, and obviously he was a huge star in that role. So,
Harper, you were asking about the role of the executive producer, and so I was, I saw it up front, and it was an education for me. I'd worked in the movie industry as a failed screenwriter for 7 years, but never I wrote some stuff for Frank Capra Jr., but I never got as high as dealing with someone like Kerry McCluggage. So that was really great. And so I saw how Kerry operated, and there were some aspects of that project that were a little bit different. First of all, there were 2 groups. There was the Papadakis group, which included Sam Cunningham and a writer named Yeager, who did another book. And there was my group, which included Anthony Davis, the great running back who was at USC with Kerry, and another man named Jim Starr. And we were represented by Lloyd Robinson. And so the first thing Kerry did, which was brilliant, was to bring us all together. There had been a project some years earlier about Steve Prefontaine, and there were 2 competing movies. I don't remember if both were made. I know at least one was, but that was sort of the template on what not to do. And so what Kerry did, and he was brilliant in doing this, was to bring both groups together under a single umbrella. And that was really smart. The second thing, and this was somewhat unique, is that Kerry had a partner named Barry Kemp, right, who had written and produced the great TV series Coach. And obviously that was about football. He knew football, and Kerry was a football fan. And so what normally an executive producer would do would be to hire a screenwriter. In this particular case, he gave that role to Barry Kemp. And I worked with Barry on some key aspects of that story, some let's call it some myths that had been formulated about what Bear Bryant did do and didn't do, and Kerry and Barry heard what I said and listened to what I said, and there were some changes made in the script. But I saw it up close how he brought the disparate elements of a project that involved a number of different people and several agents and lawyers, all under a single umbrella. So I thought that was a really smart move by you, Kerry. There's no question about
it. The landscape has also changed. I mean, the project has been sold in quotes 2 different times. I mean,
don't I know?
and both fell out for different reasons, but mostly it was because at the time, we were talking about a film, and this was pre-streaming, and this fell into the category of sports movies. I don't think it's a typical sports movie because it's not about a game or a season. It's about really a sea change in the landscape of college football. Where only in the West and the Northeast were teams integrated, and most of the South and Central teams were still segregated, and which is hard to believe that it was 1970 when this came about, and they added the 11th game to the season. That was the which led to the as in Steve's book, The Game That Changed the Nation, which opened the season for Alabama. But it's in sports movies do generally pretty well domestically, but at the time they were hit and miss overseas, and that was usually the problem that we faced. I mean, you have movies like Return of the Remember the Titans, huge overseas, and with Denzel Washington and a largely young cast that was of unknowns, and others like just to cite an example, Invincible, which was Mark Wahlberg starred in, about a Philadelphia Eagle player, and that did well domestically and nothing overseas. And that was really when people got cold feet about it, I think that was the major reason. It's a different environment now in the streaming environment where they're not as dependent upon foreign box office. I mean, and they were very anxious to have movie titles on their streaming service, and particularly driven by it's cutting back a little bit, but Netflix's strategy was to kind of carpet bomb the competition by buying all kinds of things and making it very difficult financially for everybody to compete with them. And and they've changed kind of the buyers that, to buyers that have more experience with actually picking, network product as opposed to, Netflix started out as a, the company that you got DVDs in the mail from.
Yeah.
And now they're the top streaming service. And I think actually the only one that's actually making money at this point in time. But that has changed the landscape. And unfortunately, I think for the good of this project, where they don't have to worry so much about the cost of exploiting it for them, where that market is hit and miss.
Kerry, this is a different subject and goes back to what Harper was asking you, but I have to ask.
Sure.
Did you deal with G. Gordon Liddy on Miami Vice?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean,
okay. How about this? I anticipated your skepticism. Well, what are those? Ears. Sandinista ears. I saw, by the way, Kerry, I saw G. Gordon Liddy speak at USC in 1983 when I was a student. He got a standing ovation at Bobo Auditorium. But he was fun to watch on Miami Vice. How did that happen?
We had some connections, and we recruited him to be on the show, and then wrote the piece for him, knowing that he would play it. It was he was as much fun in person as you described. I mean, beyond his public persona was very much the same as his private. So we got what we expected, and he was terrific and fun to work with.
Kerry, I would imagine a guy like that would be somebody every now and then the writers or somebody in terms of the creation of the show's content would want to pick his brain a little bit. Hey, are we doing this right? Or what would you recommend here? Is that something that happens a lot? Or is that just, no, we know what we're doing. We're the writers. You don't tell us what to do.
It depends upon the person, but
sure.
everybody had a lot of respect for, what he had gone through. So we paid close attention to the notes that he had in this case. And then, and sometimes that was, he was on one side of it, but we did obviously a lot of crime dramas, and sometimes we were getting input from people that were really on the inside on some of the crime stuff. And, if you can tell, if they have credibility, and most good writers want to replicate in an obviously, it's not totally real life, but usually, if you can include more elements that ring true, then you're creating a different window into audiences appreciating the show. And sometimes you can go too far. I remember one episode that I rewrote on Miami Vice was about a convict that Don Johnson had put into jail, and he was on death row and about to be executed. And then it was right before, about 3 days before his execution, he went on television and said, I forgive you, Sonny Crockett, because I didn't do the crime that I'm being convicted and sentenced to death for, but I did so many other bad things that it doesn't matter. And he was a born-again Christian, a jailhouse convert. And it sparked, an investigation. Sonny wanted to get back into it to make sure that they had crossed all the T's and done it correctly, and ultimately ended up getting the guy out of jail. And the final scene was they see him walking out of jail, but and he just says, they talk for a little bit, but he takes the cross that he's been wearing, rips it off, and says, "Thanks, Crockett." And he walks away knowing that everything that he'd done the crime, but he had set it up so that they proved that he could get out. And we had to do another episode because the audience was just shocked that the end of the episode was that. But the point to this anecdote was, we were doing the scene where, the priest visits after the last meal for the convict. And you've seen that scene a million times before, and we wanted to do something different. So I had them write. Well, I rewrote this scene to include. You always have the priest and the final blessings, and but the part that they don't say when they're doing an electric chair kind of thing is they bring in the rubber underpants for the convict to wear during his execution. And we said, well, nobody's ever showed that, so we'll put that in and make it different. But when we read it, we just said, I don't know. So I had to, give the notes, to keep the priest and lose the rubber underpants, because it wasn't really where we wanted to go. But, that came from just trying to make something different and real. But at a certain point, you have to revisit those things. And that's just relating it back to the Steve's project, and one that we're still trying to get sold. That's really part of the appeal of it, is that we were able to use so many incidents from the real story, and very few of the scenes are imagined, in the eye of the writer. A lot of it was because of all the research that Steve did in putting that book together. And he was available to comment on the scenes where we were speculating about what might have happened.
That was a real honor. And of all the books I've ever done, I researched the heck out of that one. I talked to probably 40 people at USC, players, coaches, media, academics, and probably 25 to 30 at Alabama. A lot of players, a lot of Bear Bryant's assistants, several media, and several academics. So I really got to the bottom of what was going on. And there were a lot of different disparate ideas about how it went down. And a lot of it, if you were black or if you were white, you had a different opinion. You had a different perspective. If you were from Alabama or from Southern California, you had a different perspective. If you were a African-American who played for the Tide as opposed to an African-American who played for the Trojans, you had a very different idea. Mm-hmm. And what I came across is that there was an awful lot of pushback from the African-Americans on the Trojans, who at first thought that John McKay, was basically doing a favor for his friend Bear Bryant and was putting the Trojans in harm's way. And there were guns brought to Alabama. But I want to ask you this, Kerry, because the guy who brought you and I together really is Anthony Davis. Mm-hmm. And Anthony did not actually play in that game, but he was in the program around the time. I think he was a freshman the next year, but he knew all the players. He knew everything that had happened.
You joined the SC team the year after.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You were at SC. First of all, I want to ask you about being at the Coliseum when we beat Notre Dame 55-24. And then next, when and how did you meet Anthony Davis?
Well, Anthony Davis was at school when I was there. I can't say that I met him. I mean, I actually did meet him, but in a very casual situation. And he was obviously a huge star almost instantaneously as a running back, and the tailback position at USC has a great tradition, but he almost reinvented it in terms of his ability to make big plays and stuff. And at the time, I mean, he was also very colorful. I mean, he was a big presence on campus.
Yeah.
I don't, at the time his wardrobe, was, just as a student on campus was borderline pimp. That's probably a bad way to put it, but it was, he had fur-lined coats and hats, and he was a peacock is a better way to put it. But he's also, one of the, he's developed a career in real estate, and he's just one of the best people you could hope to meet. And he was very open about everything that he'd been through. And I know he was a big part of consulting on your book. So you can probably comment as much about Anthony Davis as I. Well,
yeah, we're going to have him on when football season rolls around, Harper.
Yeah.
And he is a unique character. He really is. As was Sam Bam Cunningham. You couldn't get two people more different than AD and Sam, and yet they were in the same backfield in that 1972 national championship team.
And Sam was as reserved as AD was outgoing.
Yeah. Oh, a true gentleman who I got to be good friends with, and I just loved Sam.
Steven, if you don't mind, if I can interrupt, and Kerry, you're at SC at a very unique time from an athletic perspective. National championships, big games left and right. Talk a little bit about what that was for you. I mean, you played baseball in high school. You were on the field. Rod Dato called you Tiger for a couple of years while you were there.
Called everybody
what was the athletic aspect of your experience there at SC like, and how was it unique for you to where you're even smiling about some of those memories right now?
Well, my athletic career, at SC was really just limited to 2 weeks on the baseball team. The rest of the time I was just a fan, going to the Coliseum and watching the games. And
well, share that if you don't mind, because for those that just before we went on the air, I asked you a little bit about your time there at SC, and you did mention. So for somebody who's just getting to view this for the first time, they're not aware of who Rod Dedeaux might be and what his influence was on you. But talk a little bit about that. Share that story if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. I'd played baseball and football in high school, but baseball was my favorite sport, and I'd grown a little bit since. I think as a freshman, I was only 4'11" in high school, and by the time I got to SC, I was 6 foot, and I thought, well, I was a pretty good switch hitter at the time, and thought I'd be better now with a little more height and weight. But everybody, he called everybody Tiger, and he would let anybody come on the team, mostly to, if you weren't a top of the line player, mostly, to provide workouts for the starters, and he did a lot of practice games in his coaching regimen. And I joined the team for 2 weeks, and had a pretty quick realization as you watch the other players play, that they were playing at a different level. And when I was a freshman and working out with the team, Steve Kemp was a senior, and so was Fred Lynn, who went on to a major career mostly with the Boston Red Sox. And when you watch them play, you realize they were playing a different game. And so that was kind of the end of my collegiate sports experience, but just returned to being a fan throughout. But I'm not sure that that situation exists past Dedeaux at SC, but it was certainly a great window into what these athletes, what their skills are, and what kind of work they have to put into to get to that level. And he was a great developer of talent. And
Kerry, were you at the Coliseum for the 1974 Notre Dame game?
Yep.
Tell us about that.
That was the 55-24, was it?
24. Anthony Davis, 4 touchdowns.
Yeah. It was, it was a very closely fought first half. I think SC was behind by 6 points at the end of the first half.
24-6 at halftime, Kerry.
Oh, so 18 points.
Yeah.
They were definitely behind, and from the this I think is chronicled somewhat in the books, or at least in some of the research. But I think McKay gave a very inspiring halftime speech, including motivating. He just told basically Anthony Davis that he needed to return the second half kickoff for a touchdown, which he did. But it was just an amazing second half, and to watch that kind of a turnaround by the team was a special experience for anybody that's a football fan, but particularly if you were sitting on the side in the student section rooting for SC.
Yeah, I have to admit, Steve knows this, Kerry. I was there. I'm 9 years old, and my cousin was a student at SC, computer sciences and all that. So I did the cards at halftime. Those goofy cards.
Oh, sure.
They took them away because people would fling them out onto the field, and I think the cheerleaders out in the front were going, "Hey, they're playing dodgeball with these placards." But I fell in love with football in a completely different way after that game. That was such an emotional 55 unanswered points against the number 3 team in the nation. Ara Parsegian resigned as the head coach of Notre Dame when they got back to South Bend. And SC scores 55 points in 17 minutes on the clock. It was an amazing game. For you to say that, you know what, you were there too, it was almost like we should have a button that
I was
SC
there.
fans everywhere will be able to go, oh, yeah, I'd heard about that one.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, it was a great game. And particularly, Davis was outstanding, but so was the
Everybody.
entire team. And I think that was Cunningham's debut.
No, it was not.
That was earlier. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But he had a good game as well.
Pat Hayden, our friend J.K. McKay. Now,
J.K. was a consultant, on the as well.
Help me on this. Early on in the project, our movie project, trying to remember all the details, but as I recall, McKay, as you know, was an attorney, and he had an office, I believe, in Century City, and I think his office was next to one of the big talent agents, and I think they represented Kevin Costner. Was there at some point where, through all this interaction, John Kay, J.K. McKay, and Costner were talking about, and Costner wanted to play John McKay, his dad? Are you familiar with that, or can you speak to that at all?
I obviously wasn't present at the those conversations, but that's what I was told that he was interested in, and of course we would have were interested too in that. But the closest I came to some direct interaction with Kevin Costner is that when we lived in La Cañada, his daughter went to the same school as my son and daughter at Flint Ridge Prep. So I'd sometimes see him at athletic events, and I got to know him a little bit there. But there, like I said, there was not in the context of the movie project, but it's probably people are interested in him not just for his acting, but as a director as well. And if he didn't fit as an actor at this time, I'd certainly consider him as a director.
And Harper, just for your information, Kerry mentioned his daughter. His daughter, Mary McCluggage, was the 2007 Rose Queen. And I was at that Rose Bowl. That was a victory by the Trojans over Michigan. And I've never met your daughter. I've met your son, Matt, who interviewed me on a documentary he made on the history of Chavez Ravine. I always wanted to meet the Rose. I've never met a Rose Queen. So
yeah, no kidding.
One of these days, Kerry, we're going to have to make that happen. But
would you mind Kerry, did your daughter have to learn that wave right there? Is there a special technique that you have to be the Rose Queen? I've never known whether or not that's accurate. So there might be a book that Steven may have in just the Rose Queen wave and how important that is to be passed down from one generation to the next.
It's really kind of a unique process because it's not like a traditional beauty pageant. When they participate, you have to be either a senior or a freshman in the general Pasadena area, and a freshman in college or a senior in high school. And they all go to the pageant competition with just a number. Nobody knows their name or who they're affiliated with or anything like that. And they go through a whole interview process. And then they, from that process, they whittle it down from hundreds of kids down to, I think 7 on the court. And then the court chooses the queen. But with the input of the whole Rose Bowl parade committee. But she was thrilled, and she still gets tickets every year to the Rose Bowl. That's part of one of them.
That's what a plus.
Yeah.
Now, did she have to mention global world peace at any point during her interview process?
I don't think so. No.
Good. There is light at the end of the tunnel. I love it.
Yeah,
Well,
it's not the
congratulations
traditional
for that.
pageant.
And then obviously SC going to several different Rose Bowls while you were there. Was that an experience for you as well?
Oh yeah, I mean, you couldn't help but be a huge football fan at the time, and their games were so entertaining, and they were even when they lost, which was rare at that time. It was well, I mean, football obviously is a bigger sport, and in terms of fan base, but at the time, athletically, both football and baseball were huge.
Well, speaking of entertaining football, I would like you to talk to me about how you got to know Barry Kemp, who produced Coach and is your partner and is still a partner on our project,
right?
And a big football fan. So talk about that. How influential was he in you deciding that you wanted to do something about the 1970 USC Alabama game?
It was pretty much a joint decision. I'd worked with at Universal when I kind of rose to the ranks of leadership of it. They were very strong in drama, not so strong on the comedy side. And I worked with a particular agency, Broder, Curlin, and Webb. They had a number of big comedy clients at the time. Barry Kemp was one of them, coming off of shows that he had done before, and Earl Pomerantz and others, and so recruited Barry to come and to Universal, and the first show that we developed together was Coach for ABC, and that ultimately became a pretty huge hit for ABC at the time. And he, the lead character, Hayden, was really based upon Barry had gone to Iowa, and he kind of loosely based it on Hayden Fry, that was the coach at Iowa. But it was a comedy, so it was a heightened reality, and in terms of that. But Barry's one of the best, was one of the top comedy writers at the time, and but he'd also had a lot of experience. So he did Catch Me If You Can, develop that with Leonardo DiCaprio, and a couple of other movies where he was the executive producer, but was responsible for originating the ideas. So it was really an ideal fit. And we had both looked at, I think it was College Sports TV, which predated ESPN. Yes. They'd done a mini documentary on, I think it was about a 20-minute.
I was in that documentary, Kerry.
Yeah.
But my interview was filmed at my uncle's house. Yeah.
Well, it was pretty good.
Occurred because of that. I don't want to get into what it was, a complete fiasco that day, but I was interviewed at my uncle's house in that documentary. And so that was, I know that that was 2005 or 6. So it did predate. Let me ask you this. Speaking of predating your involvement in that project, I don't know if you're aware of this, but in 2003 or 2004, Gerald Molen signed a deal with Alan Graff to produce his screenplay, which was written by Graff and another guy named Ledesma. And, I know you know who Gerald Molen is. He produced Schindler's List, and he did a lot. He also, Harper, if you remember the movie Rain Man, he produced that movie, and he plays the doctor at the Institute where Dustin Hoffman's character is institutionalized. So we know what he looks like. That was 87, 88. But
I'm an excellent driver. Excellent.
I'm an excellent driver. In Cincinnati, Ohio, I'm an excellent driver. But very sparkly, very sparkly. But yes, and that, I don't want to get into how that project got blown up, but it did. And are you aware of that? And what do you think?
No, I know Gerald Malone, but no, I was unaware of that entirely.
Alan Graff was a friend of mine. Alan Graff, Alan Graff.
Yeah.
Alan Graff was a member of the Trojans in 1970. He became a stuntman, and he became a very successful second unit director who did all the football scenes, whether it's Varsity Blues, Any Given Sunday, and Friday Night Lights, you name it. Alan Graff. Alan really wanted to direct. He wanted to, and he had gotten this deal with Gerald Molen. Mm-hmm. And a mutual acquaintance of ours, I'm not going to throw his name out there, he blew it up. He threatened a lawsuit, and it's just what he did. And he threatened lawsuits on me. And we've talked about this, Harper, in the past. We don't need to really get into who this guy is, but I didn't know if you realized that story, and that, it could have been made by Gerald Molen way back in the day. And he certainly was a producer who had the capability of doing it. Well, it's had,
you're refreshing my memory a little bit. I think you did tell me a little bit about Graff wanting to do this, but it was after we'd started working on the project. When I heard that.
Well, I think I came to you and said, well, at the very least, Alan should be the second unit guy who does the football. I mean,
right.
There was no question about that. I don't know whether you felt that he could actually. He really wanted to direct. He believed and he really never got that opportunity. And I think time is eventually. That's another thing about this. I mean, how many people I interviewed who are no longer with us, John McKay, Craig Fertig, Tom Kelly,
Sam
Cunningham, I mean, and others, Marv Gu. I interviewed all these people, it all started really when I was at a magazine called Street Zebra Magazine in Los Angeles. And I wrote about this game because I wrote these columns about Los Angeles, Southern California sports history. It all started there, and unfortunately, a lot of these people are gone. But I didn't realize if you knew all the details. Alan could certainly refresh your memory with a few.
Yeah, no, I'm recalling more about it now, but but you were the one that related most of that to me,
right?
Right.
And we went. I mean, I can remember so many. I can remember Carl Weathers. I can remember Jeff Daniels. I can remember a guy who played at USC. I don't know his name, who became a high-end guy at Disney. I remember Legendary Pictures, who did the Jackie Robinson. I remember a Christian, African-American Christian director who's actually got some very good credits. He was interested. I remember in 2018, Warner Brothers, who they twice wanted to greenlight it, and it was greenlit. That was the word.
That was with Alcon, yeah.
Yeah, and I can remember
who had an exclusive deal with Warner Brothers.
Telling my mom it's finally going to happen, and my dad had passed away, and somehow that didn't
well
come.
I think, look, it's a passion project for you, obviously. For me, Barry Kemp feels similarly, and I'm just this movie needs to be made as a movie, and deserves to be made, and I'm whatever you want to call it, stubborn enough or persistent enough to keep pushing. And I think we're making some real progress now in the streaming environment. But you're familiar with the negotiations that are going on right now.
I don't have any idea what's going on.
Well, you know that Omaha Productions.
I don't know. I haven't talked to Lloyd. I talk to him maybe once a year. Jim Starr calls me once a year.
Well,
I've talked to AD
Omaha Productions,
years.
which is Peyton Manning's company, has structured a deal to be involved. And the wrinkle that I don't know which way it's going to go, because it's been a little slow since Omaha came on board. They might want to involve 101 Studios, and that's the part of the deal that's being negotiated now. But whether or not 101 Studios comes aboard, Omaha is on board, and I think it will only add more credibility to the project, because they have Peyton Manning's company. Omaha has which comes from his cadence as a quarterback.
Yeah, I'll tell you about Omaha in a second, Kerry. I don't want to interrupt, but I'll tell you a little secret about Omaha. Go ahead.
Okay. At any rate, they want to be associated with the project, and I think they can add even more credibility to the importance of this story.
I've got my pen and paper. Should I get a hat, old, Tom Landry fedora that has press written on it? Scoop? Are we getting some inside information here while we're live? Stephen, look at you. He's doing like a cat in just a Cheshire cat with some feathers in its mouth. This is great news. People are working on it, Kerry. Thank you for that. I mean, I would imagine that your previous experience, the massive amount of shows that have had great success, would have some weight in your wanting to see this. You mentioned this is a passion project for you. Sure. Every once in a while, people are going, yeah, you know what? We should listen to this McCluggage guy. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that sometimes that works for you, and sometimes there's always the possibility that you're not going to get everybody on board, but almost unanimously people realize that Barry Kemp has written an extraordinary script. We almost never get any negative comments about the script itself. It's and most people realize kind of the importance of the story, and then then all the other elements come into their decision making. And like I said, I think it's in a different place now in the post-streaming environment than it was when there was just talking about it as a straight theatrical promotion, which is expensive both to produce, but particularly, I mean, they spend more on advertising than they do on the actual production these days.
Well, don't forget, Kerry, Legion Field is still there in Birmingham.
It is, and I have been to the place. Legion Field still stands, and it's a little rusty, but there's nothing we couldn't fix in post-production.
Yeah,
to shoot there. And I've also, I mean, I think, have you been to the Bear Bryant Library?
Yes.
I mean,
I've been there, and I've been to Legion Field, and
the Bryant Library at the Alabama campus is just amazing. I mean, both in terms of the quantity of stuff that they have, but also in the quality. Bear Bryant, produced a book that scheduled every practice throughout the entire season. That started with the summary page, but once they got to the practice, it was every 15 minutes what everybody was doing. But the summary page on the USC Alabama game that was scheduled, it's the subject of our movie. I just remember the opening paragraph distinctly. It was about a 2-page document on on just the summary of his approach to the game. But the opening was that this team is bigger than you, stronger than you, and better on the field, and you're going to have to play way over your head to even contend in this game. And then, then he went about what his game plan was, because even though he and McKay were friends, he was too competitive to just lay down. I mean, that wasn't in his nature.
Well, that was one of the contentions. And there is a player named John Hanna, who was a teammate of Sam Bam Cunningham at New England. He really believed and said every time I talked to him, and said in documentaries, that he didn't say that Bryant threw the game, but he did say this. He said that like a day before the game, Bryant put them through like a hell week practice. And in fact, Hanna said he was so dog tired in this practice that he was ready to quit. He was a sophomore and wanted to quit. And the only reason he did not quit is because he went to this cot that he was sleeping on and fell asleep in his uniform, in his sweaty clothes on the cot, and fell into a deep sleep and was too tired to get up to go to Bryant's office and quit. And when he finally woke up, he said, heck with it, I'll play. So he really said, why did Bryant put us through that practice? So, but I talked to Clem Griska and Jeff Rutledge, and I don't think either one of them are with us anymore. They were Bryant's two top assistant coaches. Unfortunately, Bryant died in 1983. I went to the Bryant Museum. Those guys gave me a tremendous insight into the mind of Bear Bryant and how what you're talking about, how he approached a game, his strategy. And if he knew a coach, and he respected a coach, that was a big part of his approach. If he did not respect, I think he respected, but if he thought a coach was beneath him, he was going to go at him with everything that he had and try to put it away in the first quarter. But when he was up against Vince Dooley and the other, the great coach, there was a Georgia Tech coach, Bobby Dodd was another who he really respected, and McKay at the top of that list. He was going to really approach it in a different manner, because he knew he wasn't going to be able to put that game away in the first quarter or the second quarter. And and in this particular game, and we all know what happened, USC just jumped out and put it away early and won it 42-21. And that was only because Bama scored a couple of late touchdowns. But the crowd was taken out of the game. And, all of this, which could have been so interesting on screen, maybe someday it will, the way the crowd was silenced, and the way a small group of black fans who were sitting in the end zone seats were suddenly heard, and the way you heard the noise of black fans gathering around the stadium, and how at night outside the stadium, and when the bus is there, and I mean, this is a religious epic, as Cunningham and Clarence Davis and these black athletes who now are seen as Moses figures by the locals are approached by fans with candles singing hymns. And, a guy like Sam Cunningham, who's 19 years old out of Santa Barbara, is like, I mean, I know I played a good game, but was it really that big a deal? And it was.
Yeah,
it really was.
And I think Bear Bryant, he clearly had another agenda for using this 11th game that was added to the schedule in 1970, but that agenda did not include laying down.
No,
at all. He just needed to play an integrated team that they weren't getting in there. I don't even know if it wasn't the SEC conference then, but
It was the SEC then.
Well, not the SEC as it's been reconfigured. It's, I guess, what it is.
Oh no, Texas and Oklahoma
but-
and all these teams. Yeah.
Tulane was in it. Georgia Tech was still in it back then. Another school called Sewanee was out in the 40s. But yeah, it has changed a little bit.
But he was, he was not interested in it wouldn't have served his purposes to lay down. They knew how good his team was. And that just wasn't part of the deal. I mean, as it turned out, I mean, SC really demonstrated the.
Well, Kerry, that you just used the word demonstration. It was a demonstration. It was a demonstration of a classy, well-organized, integrated football team of black and white football players playing at the optimal level in front of these fans, looking at it and saying, well, that is something that can be done. And look, so many people have argued the merits of this game. And I have some people say, oh, there were other games that are bigger games, and UCLA played Tennessee 2 years earlier, and there were other games. And yes, there were. It wasn't.
But they didn't have the impact that this did.
The timing of the game coming as the Vietnam War is winding into a bad place, and the culture of America and the political sensibilities of America, and in some ways the conservative nature of politics that was taking place in the South at the time, all these factors played into this game having a demonstration that was different from previous games.
Yeah, and his audience was a different audience. I mean, this was a demonstration for Alabama fans that adamantly did not want the team to be integrated. They made it difficult for him to even recruit black players. I think they only had one black player on the team that never, that they were able to successfully recruit, and he wasn't even eligible to play in this game.
That is correct.
But George Wallace was the governor, and he's famous for defending, segregation now, segregation forever.
But he was out by the time this game was played.
But his term was just ending. I mean, that was still.
He was out, and then I think he brought his wife Lurleen in to be governor. Incredibly,
yeah.
And she died of cancer. So all of this was kind of creating a little bit of a political.
But he was still, on the scene politically. I mean, he was going to run for. Well, he did have a run for president, but
yeah,
as an independent, but. It was a powerful figure, and so were the. So he had a lot of people, to make this demonstration too, to allow him to do it. And like I said, it didn't depend upon them winning or losing the game, but just seeing another team that was integrated and the potential that had for ultimately for Alabama and the rest of college football.
Don't forget the role and influence of Jim Murray of the LA Times, who had written incendiary national syndicated columns excoriating Alabama, first in 1961, then again in 1966.
Yeah, that column is Jim Murray was a great writer, but I think that column is one of the best columns he did.
Well, his column the next day, September 13th, 1970, might have been the greatest headline. I believe it said, Constitution ratified as Trojans beat Tide. Something wonderful like that.
Yeah, it also had a sub-headline, but we should researched that. And
Well, it's in the book.
yeah, but I forget what the subheading, but it was he had another catchy phrase that was the start of it, of the article. But
yeah, talking about stars and bars, and the Constitution was ratified yesterday when a group of a peaceful white and black American citizens arrived at Legion Field, and a riot did not break out. Kind of paraphrasing. I've read it and it's in my book. I don't have it in front of me, but it was fabulous. Also, there was a wonderful writer who became a very, very, very good friend of mine, and unfortunately passed away way too soon. Like I'd mentioned, his name was Jeff Prue. He was the game writer of that game. He sat with Murray in the press box, and he always talked about the next day as he was getting ready to go to the airport, and he was sitting in a coffee shop, and he overheard just some locals, and they were saying, we're going to need some of the, we're going to need some of those black athletes. It looks like old Bear is going to have to get some. And he said, this was just all of a sudden it was in the air, and this wasn't said after UCLA played Tennessee or USC played SMU. Certainly was not said when USC and C.R. Roberts, who became a good friend of mine, and the originator of this show, Vincent Turner, is a big fan of C.R. Roberts. As you recall, C.R., remember Kerry in Dallas, you were there when I hosted this magnificent event before we played Alabama. The game was not so magnificent, but I met your wife that day, and that was just a great weekend. And CR was there with Sam Cunningham. What an honor for me to have these wonderful Trojans. I thought maybe that event was going to just sort of propel the movie, and because there were a lot of people from Alabama there, and they were all, they all were as interested as the SC people. But it's been a long road, but a very interesting one.
Yeah, it has, and I want to get that long road to the finish line. I'm just stubborn enough to, and I know you are too, and I appreciate all your help on your end, Steve.
Well, I'm doing this podcast now, so we are talking about it. It's been the subject on this show in several ways, and it will be again. Certainly, Charles Young has been on this show, talking about it in his unique way. AD is going to come on. You're on. I've gone through a whole show talking about soup to nuts. It goes back. I'm a student at USC in 1982, and I'm sitting at the old 502 club, and I'm with this guy named Cliff Culbreth. And Cliff was a backup player for the Trojans in the early 70s. And Cliff was telling me all about this game and McKay and just what it was like to be a black player at USC in the early 70s. There were issues. And I remember he said someone should write a book,
And he said, I'm the guy.
I didn't say that, but I mean, I eventually became the guy. So and it certainly has played an enormous role in my life and in my career, because it was a very successful book. It was one of the, I've written 2 or 3 really high selling books, and that was one of them, the Barry Bonds book, and 1 or 2 others. But that was a labor of love.
I'll bet.
Like you were saying.
And it shows, in your book.
Thank you.
Kerry, I would imagine that some of the organizational skills that it takes to mesh all of this together, this isn't stuff that you learned at the Harvard Business School, but you went there after you have first got your degree from SC. You decided to go there. Talk a little bit about your background in that, the importance of wanting to have that degree, or at least to work on that. Was that to say, here's a philosophy some people have: go to school to learn how to run your own business. Was there a philosophy that you may have had that one day I want to be an executive and have my own company? Did you have that mindset when you were going to school, or did that eventually come obviously afterwards?
I knew I wanted to work in the entertainment industry. In exactly what capacity, I was more interested in being a supplier than being a buyer. But I kind of got talked into going to Harvard Business School. I applied, and there were not that many people that were accepted right out of college, because usually they wanted you to be out in the business world and come back after 3 to 5 years in the business world.
So in between the summer when you graduate and then when you do the application, we're only talking about a couple of months there when that, or did you fill in the application for Harvard Business School in the middle or maybe at the beginning of your senior year?
Yeah, and it was in second semester senior year.
Okay, gotcha.
But the I didn't. Obviously the school had a good reputation. I knew that people didn't go to recruit there but I thought it would help to be able to combine kind of the business side with the creative side, because a lot of times you're either in one camp or the other. I think literally there was only one person that came to interview people at Harvard Business School from the entertainment industry, and that was Peter Guber, when he was still partnered with John Peters. But I've always, I appreciate that side of it, which is, I don't know, left side or right side of the brain, but it helps to be able to be conversant if you're an executive on both sides of the equation, the creative side as well as the business side.
Yeah, I've always said that's your biggest advantage. That's your biggest plus, is that you are equally strong, whether it's creative, working on the script, looking at potential actors or directors, and also you're in the area of business and getting a film released and maximum audience. That's something that you've specialized. But you're talking about college, so our backgrounds are actually very similar. Obviously, both USC. You were in the broadcasting end of it. I was in the communications school at USC, which is strongly connected to broadcasting.
Right.
Today, they've combined Annenberg broadcasting and the film school, has sort of married them together. I took 2 or 3 classes in film school. It played a huge role in my writing career, but it took a long time to develop. I got A's in film appreciation class, and actually wrote a screenplay at USC about all my buddies. And we would sit around, drink beer, and read from the screenplay. But I got a straight A from the great Andrew Casper. But and then I went to graduate school like you did, and then sort of fell into writing. You had a much more strong plan from the beginning. I was more seat of my pants. But where I'm getting at is you have a relationship with the USC Film School, and I believe your wife was, maybe still is, a trustee there. I don't know if she still is. I know she was.
She's not a trustee, but she's still involved with USC. But
and I actually taught a class there, a symposium on the making of Apocalypse Now, from a book I wrote on called Coppola's Monster Film. It was in 2016. But SC, a few years ago, decided to take on this project that we're talking about, 1970 USC. They were going to farm out the screenplay to student writers. Have you ever heard of anything like that? Did anything come of it? And what's your comment on that?
Well, you're familiar with another studio. They tried to develop it with student writers from SC, but not as a movie, as a miniseries that they were planning on 10 to 12 episodes to do. I didn't really think that they should go through with that, but because at one point I had shown the script to Elizabeth Daly, our script, um, and this is a great story. I really believe in the story, but I do not believe that it's a story that sustains for 10 to 12 hours. And I just don't think it's well suited to that format. And to my knowledge, nothing has really happened with that.
That was one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard in my association with the Hollywood film industry.
But you never know. I mean, maybe they're still pursuing it, but from what I'm told, they hired a bunch of student writers, and they didn't get obviously any response, at least that's surfaced on the building. You mean in the press? And I'm sure that they would make an announcement if they'd had any success trying to sell it. I don't even think they've gone to that step.
Right.
Harry, would you mind, while we're talking about the USC Film School, for someone who's never been there but who might be listening, you can hear a lot about it. And if I were a Bruin, or if I went to Stanford, or even San Diego State, or I went to Colorado State, I'd heard of it, but I don't know anything about it. Talk a little bit about the importance and the value that you found and how it has evolved in the past 10, 20, 30 years. And is this really magnificent place for you to learn how to be a movie producer or director or an executive like you are, and what it has meant for you specifically?
Well, I'm a little bit on the other side of the equation, in that when I was there, it was just the School of Cinema, which was, and their offices were located in the former stables.
Yeah.
And broadcasting was part of the Annenberg School, the School of Journalism, as opposed to being integrated in cinema television as it is now. So it was a separate track for TV versus film at SC in my day. But this is, back I graduated from there in 1976, so 72 to 76. You could still take classes in the cinema school. Their big draw was Cinema 190, which was just, I'm sure, Steve, you probably had that.
I think that's one I took.
We're basically the whole semester is watching movies.
And writing about it.
Yeah. And you'd have to write papers and do, it was, I'm not saying it wasn't rigorous, but
it was a lot of movies. It was a very good class. Drew Casper ran it with aplomb, I can tell you. And he's still around. I still talk to him.
For somebody who's not been there, would that be kind of like a history of cinema, or at least, the intricacies of how Hollywood has done this over the years and how it may change?
Very much so. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a compendium of the history, which was, all in the 20th century at that time. So
sure.
It was, and you were talking about, and SC's really done some smart things. As you mentioned, it was a film. I mean, it starts off with basically three people who explode. This is John Milius, who writes Apocalypse Now. This is George Lucas, who makes Star Wars and previously American Graffiti. Their friend is Francis Ford Coppola. He's over across the street with Jim Morrison at the UCLA Film School. And then there's another character by the name of Spielberg, who's at SC so much that he might as well have been a student. And then Time Magazine gets a hold of these guys in 1968 and writes an article about the new student filmmakers. And prior to that, nobody got out of film school and got a job in Hollywood. Roger Corman was hiring some people. But when those guys exploded on the scene, that really opened up the USC Film School. And then they made some really smart decisions. They combined a producer's division with the basic creative elements of being a director. And I think they also partnered with the drama school. I know UCLA did. I'm not sure if SC did that. And then they combined also with the Annenberg School in terms of broadcasting and, and nowadays social media, because they understood and were always at the cutting edge of the changing dynamics of popular culture. They were always ahead of the game, and you were there. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I asked you, was your wife a trustee there for a number of years?
She was not a trustee, but she was very involved with Kappa Alpha Theta sorority and their foundation.
Oh, okay. I thought she was a trustee.
Nope.
Okay.
I know several other people that were trustees,
Yeah,
like Joe Boscovich, etc. But she's been very involved with alumni activities in her sorority and at the foundation. So.
right. Well,
and, we had several of the same classes, although we didn't date each other then in college.
So you met her in school, and it wasn't until after. Tell us if you can. I don't want to impose, but your bride was also a Trojan, and you met her there, but didn't go out with her until after you were done. Was that when you were in Boston for your Harvard experience?
Yeah, we started dating the summer between the first year and second year at Harvard Business School. At the time when we were both at SC, we had a lot of classes together, but I was dating another girl in the Theta sorority. That's a longer story, but her parents were more interested in somebody else. Well, but not at the time. I mean,
Welcome to the club of many a man being rejected by the parents and not the girls so much.
Yeah,
Well,
my ex-wife was a Trojan as well. I met her on campus. So,
yeah.
Well, they didn't know at the time. They were beer distributors, and they were really looking for somebody to run the Budweiser distributorship for the state of Arizona.
Oh boy, yeah.
Which was a great place to have a Budweiser distributorship, and she ended up marrying John McCain, the senator.
Oh wow! Well, let me ask you this: does your wife, and I'm generalizing so much, so I just does she ever hear you grunt or smile or laugh out loud about a project, and then she looks at it, she goes, "You know what, honey, you should make that. You should. I like the way you're reacting." Does she have some insight in terms of your either approval or disapproval over a script, a pilot, a potential for a new show or a movie?
Yeah, I mean, she worked in the entertainment industry as well. She was in the until our second child. She was working for Lorimar in international distribution.
Okay.
So we were both working in the same industry. This is after she started at the LA Times in their classified ad sales, and then went to international distribution at Lorimar. But she's a good sounding board or critic or fan, depending upon the quality of the material, and she's definitely rooting for this project.
Well, I at one point I kind of was thinking I was very impressed with your son Matt. Interviewed me at length for a great documentary. You can still see it on YouTube. I think I sent you. I came across it out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, this is an impressive young fellow. Maybe someday he'll direct it. What? Is there any chance of that happening?
Well, he's been mostly working on the producing side, not the directing side. But he's been executive producer on a number of shows, and ultimately I couldn't talk him out of going into the business. So my daughter works in healthcare, um, but it's been a little slow. I'm helping him with the movie that he's developing with a friend that he met at SC, who was in the film school, and it's a good script. Just needs a little work, and they're going to try to shoot it in a couple of months.
Excellent.
But he'll be the producer on it, and his friend is the director and also a producer.
Kerry, you mentioned a little slow right now, and I don't mean to go into the depths of the business itself where we are presently, but podcasting, for example, is something that none of us would have been talking about just maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I think radio is dying a slow death. I don't mean this to be disrespectful of it, but it's just, I mean, they make cars now that don't even have a radio. You've got a computer and access to the apps and all the different Wi-Fi connections that are necessary. But radio is different. Television is still very expensive. What do you see in the technology line of fire that is going to be making movies or television shows or just content in a way that's different maybe 2 or 3, 5 years from now that doesn't maybe even exist in some respects today? Do you see anything in the pipeline?
Well,
AI.
Robots? Are we going to have
AI.
Yeah, it's going to have a huge effect, and it already has. I mean, just in terms of, even though it's nascent in its development stage, the power of it is really going to transform the industry. I mean, the last big revolution was the one we've been talking about, which was the move from broadcasting and cable to streaming, and eventually, I think it's going to have I don't think it's going to eliminate broadcasting, but I think it's going to relegate it more to news and special events than entertainment orienting as time goes on, and in the ability to put entertainment on streaming services and accessible at any time and on your schedule, I think is ultimately it's already in the process of reshaping the business. But what the development of AI in terms of entertainment programming is, there's huge copyright issues. The ability to use existing footage to create new footage, and what are the actors' rights in that regard is a huge issue that's still to be resolved. I mean, I haven't played that much with that, but just as an experiment, I asked Chat GPT if it could create a main title for a show that was in the style of Miami Vice, but had different aspects to it. And normally when you try to do something with Chat GPT, you get like an instantaneous answer. It took 2 hours before it spit back a main title version that it created out of created footage and found footage, and wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But there are huge issues involved in that, and I don't think there's any. You can't isolate it from having an impact on television and film production. I think it will, but there's a lot of copyright issues to be involved in that, and what an actor's rights. And I think the most high profile suit right now is by the lady that's married to Colin Jost on Saturday Night Live. Johansson.
Yeah.
I think she's pursuing a suit where they've taken footage from her and used AI to make it a different version of her performances.
Yeah.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's going to evolve as it becomes more prevalent in the business, because it's a very powerful tool, and it's I guess that's the whole point of it, is that it's learning how to be better.
Well, I once asked what would happen if Paul McCartney and Pete Townsend got together to write a song, and it gave me the lyrics, and it was a good song.
Mm-hmm.
A really good song. It had the sensibilities of Won't Get Fooled Again mixed with, Hey Jude. And, you got a band together wanted to use those lyrics, it would be good. But, Kerry, I'm going to be at my first actual University of Alabama Crimson Tide football game this fall. I'm going to go. I've got a friend who's got season tickets, and not sure which game it's going to be, but I'm looking forward to that.
That's an experience. It won't be the same as Legion Field, but
no, I would have loved. Yeah, I have several good friends. I have a good friend, Terry Marks. You've never met him, but you would love him. SC guy, played for Dado. He was the president of Coca-Cola for a number of years, high-end executive, and he passed one day. He was in Birmingham, and he took a picture of Legion Field and said, "I'm thinking of you," and he sent it to me like a postcard.
Yeah.
But listen, Kerry, we want to be very respectful of your time. Is there anything else that you're working on that you want us to know, that you're promoting, or any other thoughts that you feel that you need to bestow upon the world at this time? Because now is an opportunity.
Well, in terms of Craftsman Films Project, which is my company, I mean, that I'm singularly focused on getting our movie made. I'm kind of helping out in terms of rewriting on my son's movie, and that they hope to go. But I think it's fair to say that I'm I closed the offices in LA, and so it's really just these two projects that I want to get done, just as a I'm just stubborn. This project needs to be made, so I get this made. And
Kerry, would you be interested in working with me on a book about the making of this movie? Because it has been an odyssey. And Lloyd Robinson, my agent, has been my agent since 1999. I think he was 70 then. I mean, now Lloyd's grandfather was the president or vice president of Universal, in the site, but Buster Keaton was the biggest name in Hollywood. He's seen everything. This guy has seen everything that's ever happened since he's out of USC law school in 1964. By the way, Harper, the guy we're talking about, he played himself in remember that goofball movie called Bruno, with Kerry, what was the name of that actor? Do you remember that guy's name? He started off as sort of this Arab comic character, and then he made these weird movies where he played him. It was halfway. It was almost like medium cool. It was like.
Yeah, I don't recall it off the top of my head. I could.
Bruno. Yeah, Bruno. Well, anyway, Lloyd was in that, and he didn't even realize he was in the movie. They had to come to him later and say, "Okay, we have all these shots of you. We need to."
Baron Cohen is who I'm reading.
Yes, Sacha Baron Cohen.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and but. Anyway, where was I going with Lloyd? But Lloyd had said it's been the longest option he's ever seen. He thinks it's the longest option in the history of Hollywood.
Will the title of the book be called, if you do decide to do this, Kerry, along with Steven, How Not to Make a Movie, or How to Do This? We couldn't make a decision any slower than the snail pace that it's been going so far.
Well, our decision-making process was quick.
Yeah.
But ultimately, there's even in the streaming world, you have to enlist partners that are going to actually put the money down to do this and produce it. And like I said, I don't. I'm stubborn, and particularly for projects that deserve to get made, and I think can have a huge impact. And this is one of them. So I'm not going to call it a career until this gets made.
Well, hey, good. I've got it written into my trust that it gets made after I'm gone.
Let's hope it's long before that.
To my daughter, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, Kerry, it's hilarious. You sit down at the Travers Lee household. My daughter is married to a guy named Jason Lee. At Thanksgiving or Christmas, and the wine starts to flow, and invariably my son-in-law or my daughter or one of their friends would go, Dad, tell us about the One Night, Two Teams project, because I'm a storyteller, that's why I'm doing this show.
Mm-hmm.
So I've told that story many times. I've written about it on Substack, and but this is a forum for you, Kerry. If you want to sort of join our team and sort of tell the stories of Hollywood from Kerry McCluggage and Barry Kemp, I'm sure we could work out an hour a week for you to do that, and I could help you do that. But
I don't want to bore people.
I don't think it. People are not bored by stories of the film industry. It's a fascinating. I have such a love-hate relationship. I'm not crazy about the politics, but I love movies. Patton, Apocalypse Now. The Player is one of my all-time favorite movies, and that's a real look into how a film is made. And there were some great ones back in the day. Not so much Hollywood, but Sweet Smell of Success. Do you remember that movie with
Sure.
Lancaster? Yeah, that was a real look into journalism, black journalism or dark journalism.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
We'll continue to talk. And is there anything else that you would like me to cover, Harper?
Well, before we go, I just want to say thank you for your time and so many amazing projects. Is there any portion of a show that you've had where there's a funny story that you just love to tell? Because whether it be a big show that, the Magnum PI, or we've talked about so many others that you've done here, Miami Vice, that you go, you know what, this one's going to go with me to my grave, because this is a part of my history and my involvement with a specific episode or a specific show that just made you laugh or made you cry?
Well, I mean, we already talked about Law and Order. I think, it was particularly rewarding to have that show see success after Barry Diller pronounced it dead on arrival. But some of the particularly related to this, I mean, there was even a lot of drama on Coach, which is where the first show that I developed with Barry Kemp, who's my partner on this project. And in the times when you prevail on that, it would really kind of depend upon your credibility going forward. But to make a long story short, usually either depending on your schedule, Thursday night or something was usually a night that you would tape the pilot, and the license fee negotiation had gone on and on with ABC without successfully closing, because we were asking for some not that special stuff, but stuff that was important in the deal, and it got to, the show was going to start at 7, and it got to be at 5:00. We still had not a closed deal with ABC to do the pilot, and this was just after Bob Iger arrived at ABC from Cap Cities, pre-Disney. But and I had to call and say, look, you're welcome to come to the show, but at this point we don't have a deal, and I'm inviting the three other networks at the time, to come and see the show, and they'll have a free right to option the show because we've been unable to close the deal. And your people have said no and no and no, and we're just tired of that. So so it took 20 minutes for him to call me back and close the deal and ask me to disinvite the other networks, which we were more than happy to do. But sometimes it gets into a fairly highly leveraged situation, but ultimately all in service of the product, and they were enthusiastic about the product and didn't want to lose it. So, but that was it's incidents and episodes like that where you were able to ultimately persuade and or sometimes you had to twist the arm to get a worthy project made, and that was Coach was one of them, and that's part of what forged. We'd already brought Barry into an overall deal, but on that his admiration of the persistence and strategy in terms of negotiating the deal he was always very grateful for, and it's part of our history together that anyway, it's just a related story to one of the principals in this. There's there's no official right or wrong in terms of predicting the success of a project. But if you don't believe in what you have put on the page as a writer or as a producer, then it has no chance of getting made. And ultimately,
passion, believe in it with all your heart and soul. Anything you do, whether it's being a pro athlete, Harper and I are both athletes. Harper played 11 years in the NFL. Got to believe in yourself with all your heart and soul. You're gonna get this guy out. You're gonna make that tackle. You're gonna make a perfect snap. You mentioned Magnum PI, and our fellow Trojan, the great Tom Selleck, obviously was the star of that. Did you have anything to do with Tom Selleck being the narrator of a Showtime documentary about the 1970 USC Alabama game, which came out in 2013?
I didn't have anything to do with that. But it's funny because, Tom went from being a contract player and to a huge star after Magnum PI, and he's interesting, and part of it is obviously his appeal is he's a big, tall, physically handsome guy.
Just be frank, Kerry. Just because the ladies loved him. The ladies loved the stash. They loved him.
But like I said, he'd had about 6 failed pilots before, and I think that the key to it was that Magnum PI, with the voiceover particularly, had this self-deprecating humor, and that's what really opened the world to him. But in addition to that, he has a great voice for narration.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and
Kerry, Tom Selleck was a teammate of my good friend Bill Spaceman Lee and Tom Seaver, playing for Rod Dado on the USC baseball team, as well as the volleyball team, 1966, 67.
Mm-hmm.
He had a brother named Bob, I think also played for the Trojans.
Yeah, Bob Selleck. Yeah.
Great athlete. And he made a movie called Mr. Baseball. And the first baseman in that movie is a guy by the name of Chuck Fick, who was tried to be an actor for a couple of years, did some episodes of Hill Street Blues, and he plays the first baseman in Mr. Baseball, and Selleck is leading off for. And Chuck was my catcher in the minor leagues when I was with A's. Yeah, and Chuck is playing first base. He's also the catcher in Naked Gun when Reggie Jackson is going to try to shoot the Queen of England. But in Mr. Baseball, Selleck's leading off first base, and Chuck, and he's so deadpan. He goes, "Got any naked pictures of your wife?" Oh my God. Yeah. So there's a lot of connections, with between being a Trojan somehow connects you to the world. It's like a backseat pass to Hollywood and the sports world and the journalism world and the political world and the world of, Los Angeles social hierarchy. It really is a backseat pass to an amazing life, and I highly recommend, kids, if you want to go to the University of Southern California, if you really put your mind to it, you can make the most out of that education. I assure you.
Yeah, I would agree. Even though there's been some controversy about the leadership at USC, but they're in the middle of that process right now. So they're doing well. But
all right.
Well, let me ask you this.
Sure.
In no particular order, Judge Miles Lane, Judge Joe Brown, Judge Judy, The Arsenio Hall Show, Entertainment Tonight, Frasier, Star Trek, Moesha, Star Trek Voyager. These are all Paramount, UPN films or television shows that you've been a part of. Northern Exposure, Coach we mentioned, Major Dad. One that I just absolutely loved when I watched it. It really fascinated me from a scientific standpoint, Quantum Leap. Sure. A-Team, The Equalizer. We mentioned Magnum PI just a moment ago. Law and Order. Am I missing anything there? You've had your hand and your magic finger that you taught your daughter how to wave you've touched all of these and so many others. You've got your own production company and Craftsman Films. You've worked for United Paramount and Paramount Plus, you mentioned earlier, Universal.
We started at UPN.
What on earth have you not been a part of, Kerry? This is an unbelievable resume. Well,
I've been lucky to work with some very talented people, and this sounds totally. It's an honor to work with the people that I've had the opportunity to work with, and to help them realize their vision for movies or television shows. I just find very rewarding. So it's like most people, I mean, if you enjoy work, it's not work.
Yeah. No.
Well, I appreciate your humility, Kerry. I do. It's genuine, and you're a very humble man. But I would dare say that everyone that you think had, you've benefited from being from would also repeat the compliment and say, you know what, we wouldn't have been anywhere without Kerry and everything that he's done to contribute to our projects on numerous levels. I think it's a very equal playing field where both sides would appreciate each other.
Yeah, I mean, but it's part of. I mean, like I said, you can approach the business from a lot of different perspectives, but I found it most rewarding to be involved in the process on the creative elements as much as possible, because those are the more difficult questions for a writer or a producer to answer and to get feedback on. And if they know that you're working in service of making their idea or even an idea that you've given them as successful as possible, they're more than happy to get that input and feedback and help to make their project be all that it can be and should be.
Well, I know that teamwork is a phrase that may be used, but the unity and the connecting, the glue, the string, the duct tape that's necessary to get everybody what they need in order to do their job the best that they can possibly do, you're a major component in making sure that that happens. Is that a fair statement? That's part of your job description, right?
Part of how I describe my job, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if everybody else is on
I've seen it. I've seen it up close, and you're adept at it, as is Barry. But I can tell you this: I'm looking forward to hanging out with you on the red carpet.
There you go.
We'll have a red carpet. We'll do two of them. We'll do one at USC at the film school, and another at the University of Alabama. Each one will have its own unique vibe. But I'm encouraged by your enthusiasm that after all the years you've been in this business, you still have the enthusiasm of like your son, Matt, just a young person who is just driven by passion to make something happen in the arts. And so, Kerry McCluggage, it has been my honor to have you on Take 5 with Steven Travers, and it has truly been my honor to be your friend, colleague, and associate, and fellow Trojan. So
there you go. Well, I would say in shorthand, back at you. I mean, it's been great working with you, and we just get this project to the end. Harper, it was nice to meet you.
Well, thank you very much. Let us exit this show in a proper fashion. And Steven, thank you for bringing Kerry. And Kerry, thank you again for your time. We're a little over 2 hours. I bet you were thinking, oh my gosh, I wouldn't be tortured with these guys for more than at least 60 minutes, and you've doubled that. So we thank you for your patience with us. And I want to thank our audience for participating here today. Special type of view. Normally we would talk about football or baseball or whatever. Today we hit the arts. We hit something that was a little bit different, even though the major portion of the project revolves around the game of football. And one special night back in 1970, we're doing everything we can to keep that alive and what its significance was for our nation. So we appreciate that. And Kerry, thank you for being a part of the show. This has been Take 5 with Steven Travers. Once again, I'm Harper LeBel saying thank you, everybody, for tuning into another episode of 100 Yards of Football. We appreciate it. Have a fantastic rest of your day.